So I'd like to welcome John Entwistle to the stage. John, thank you for being here. On my journey with cannabis, meeting Dennis and John and Wayne and Shep and the people that were part of that community in the Castro and the Castro Castle was really important and formative in my journey in the cannabis industry. And really the future of this is keeping these stories alive and keeping them embedded in the industry of today. So I thank you all for being here. I'm going to pass the microphone off to John here and let him share some more about the history. John, I commend you for all your work, bringing us to this moment now.
Wow. Brian, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for that movie. That was really well done. I'm pinching myself because we are sharing today a dream that we really all shared once. Many of us shared once. Many of us never heard of it. But this is a dream, to be included in the California State Fair like this, to be earning gold and silver and medals from the state of California for growing cannabis. Okay, this is a first. This is a serious touchdown. Okay, we call this Operation Foot in the Door, nose under the tent. Okay, we're here. We're going to be part of this fair forevermore. And we should be especially proud of the California State Fair and for Brian Applegarth and the guys at Cultivar Productions. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how Brian talked these guys into this, how he got it happening, but this is the very first time this has ever happened in any state, anywhere. So this is the first, and it will never stop. It's going to go on for a long time. So, on that happy note, it was Harvey Milk, the first gay elected politician from San Francisco. Harvey said a lot of things. I could talk about him all day, but I'm not going to. I'm going to tell you one thing he said. He said that the reason that we tell you who we are, what our sexuality is very specific and very important. The reason is because we want people to know us as people, as individuals that they know and love and respect. When you hear about the federal government debating gay marriage, I want my family to say, that's my son John they're talking about, and his husband Dennis. Thank you. I think that was a little weak on the gain. And his husband Dennis. This is what Harvey said. He said, we want to put a face on it. They might approve of us as in theory or whatever, but we want them to know who we are, because that's how we build who we are. Everybody in this society is not a straight person. We are the whole rainbow. Okay? And we are here. We are gay. We are lesbian. We are bisexual. We are transgender. We are queer. And plus anything else we can think of, as long as it's not too binary. Okay? So in that happy note, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is John Entwistle. I am a bisexual man. My husband was Dennis Peron. Many of you have heard of Dennis. He was the greatest pot activist this country's ever seen. I have been a pothead since I was a young man. It was a radicalizing experience for me in the 1980s in high school to find out that the whole world didn't want you to smoke pot. That if you did that, you could end up in any number of bad places. You could end up in drug rehab. You could end up in prison. You could end up thrown out of school. You could end up losing jobs. You could end up stigmatized in 100 ways. It was a very radicalizing experience, and I believed, because I smoked the stuff, and I tried it, and I couldn't take, there was obviously all lies. And so I believed that you had to fight for it right away. This was a radicalizing experience in my life. We went on, did a lot of things. I'm here because I'm a co-author of Proposition 215. I started one of the first, Kenneth Dennis and I in our group started one of the very first farms, not the first. I think the first has to go to a woman named Valerie Corral from a group called WHAM in Santa Cruz. But I'd be honored to be second to Valerie any day of the week. But we were one of the first out of the closet I started with the very first out of the closet open air marijuana dispensary ever. We did this in San Francisco. We did it because we wanted to change the laws and we wanted to distribute cannabis to AIDS patients and we wanted to take it to court. And we wanted to be in front of a judge. And we believed that a judge would go with us on this. Today I want to talk to you about a couple of topics. I want to talk to you about activism. What it is to be an activist. That's a very generic term. I want to talk to you about intersectionality today. I want to talk to you about the history, the intersection of queer and pot, because they are related. This is a new one for a lot of folks. What? No, they are related. These are things that will get you thrown out of the family. They will get you tossed out of the will. These are taboo things that are very stigmatized in our society, are with its puritanical roots. And we are together in this struggle. There's a lot of history here, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. The history of where we're coming up with this intersectionality idea. Why it's so important to have a coalition, and that coalition be gay people, straight people, and everyone else we can bring into the fold. And I want to talk about where we're going. La lucha continua. The struggle continues into the future. Today as I speak, we're here. Air-conditioned room. It's amazingly nice here. We're drinking CBD refreshments. You can go out, get a wine slushy. Okay, we got it made. But right now, in Russia, Brittany Griner, our sister, Brittany Griner, our lesbian sister, Brittany Griner, is sitting in a cage. Why? Because she had less than a gram of cannabis oil. I want to talk about that a little bit. So, the globalization of our politics and our industry, how we're going from this point now, and we're going from the dark ages, but we're not going to stop here. We're continuing. Someday, cannabis is going to be as available and as cheap and as high quality as orange juice, tobacco products, etc. That's the future. So we're on a path that continues. I want to talk about some of those issues and those ideas and share a few thoughts on that. So that's the basic gist to where we're going today. I want to start with activism. That's a new concept. It doesn't pay real well. I don't know, you put it on your resume, nobody knows where to put you. But it's a really important thing because this was created by change is created by activism. If you want to see a better world, you're going to need activists. That's who makes everything. That's how we change the world, is activism. Okay? People stop everything they're doing and say, this is important. For whatever reason it is in their soul they believe in, they get up there and they fight for something. This is a creative challenge. It's not always easy. Sometimes you're the underdog. I know in the cannabis movement, we went through 20 or 30 years of very dark periods but a lot of people stood up and never stopped. They fought. They organized events. They organized civil disobedience events. They organized gatherings where we could come together. They stood up to defend guys and women and people who had been put in jail for pot. As an activist, I've spent many, many years in courtrooms. I spent many years fighting for my own personal freedom in front of judges and juries, and I've also fought for other people's personal freedoms in courtrooms. Brittany Griner, for example, right now is looking at 10 years in jail. Okay, so the stakes are very high in these things, and that is how it used to be here. As an activist, I want to talk about as an activist, you're going to do a lot of reading and writing. Okay? You're going to do a lot of reading and writing. You're going to do a lot of legislative analysis. You're going to look at a lot of procedures. You're going to be working with the media. You're going to be getting your ideas out. You're going to be in court. You're going to be doing fundraising. You're going to be doing a lot of printing. When I was a young activist, printing was a whole different thing. We didn't have the internet. A lot of us remember that. We're not all spring chickens here. Remember the days when it used to be a printing press? and a lithograph machine and stick on labels? Right. We have different tools now. It used to be, as an activist, when you wanted to read a law, you had to go to a law library. When you wanted to know what the legislature was doing at the federal or whatever level, you had to go to a federal depository for documents. All of that's on the internet now. We have new tools. But the job is the same. We have to direct the society. We have to find the laws we want to change. We have to write the changes out. We have to make the sale. We have to sell people on the idea that we're looking at something new and different and big and special and good, and we want to have it. So you're doing a lot of sales. You're going to do a lot of printing. You're going to do T-shirts, buttons, stickers, all kinds of good stuff. You're going to be doing a lot of design, a lot of networking. If you're lucky, you'll work with some good artists. There was a guy named Saul Alinsky wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. Highly recommend that if you want to understand a little bit more about organizing. I want to talk about that intersectionality thing a little bit. As I said, the struggle for gay rights, the struggle for inclusion, to eliminate job discrimination, to have the legal right of marriage, and on and on and on, okay? And the struggle for legal cannabis, and to not be thrown in jail for being a pot smoker. These are two very related groups. They both go back a certain distance. They're very, very closely related cousins. I want to speak about, when we're talking about intersectionality, I want to talk about my husband. I want to talk about Dennis Peron. Dennis is a gay man from Long Island, and he went to Vietnam. And in Vietnam, he was in the Tet Offensive. And during the Tet Offensive, this is where the whole Vietnam War changed, okay? One day you're in Saigon and it's a party. Next day you're in Saigon and people are trying to kill you everywhere you look. You are ducking, you are hiding for your life. That's where Dennis Peron was. He was an 18-year-old, 19-year-old gay guy serving 2 terms in Vietnam. Okay? And, okay, so he's over there in Vietnam, and the sergeant says, grab a gun. We got to start shooting back. These guys are shooting at us. And Dennis said, no way, man. I signed on to fix radios in airplanes, okay? And you can't, I'm a clerk. You can't make me shoot anybody. I'm not here to shoot people. He wasn't going to do it. And so to punish him, the powers that be down there said, okay, we're going to put you, after dust settled, they said, we're going to put you in the morgue. And they made him work in the morgue in the Air Force, putting the bodies of young men who had been killed, preparing them to be shipped home. For 30 days, he shipped home 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old guys, dead. Every one of them dead. Put them in the coffin. Some of them, you couldn't recognize them. Okay, so that's where he decided that he really hated war. He hated war. And when he came home, he believed that the key to unwinding the war mentality in this country was the marijuana thing and our attitude towards sexuality. And he decided that that's where he was going to make his stand. That's where he was going to put his efforts. So when he got back from Vietnam in 1972, he worked with Gordon Brownell, the son of Attorney General Brownell, who was Eisenhower's Attorney General. Gordon Brownell deserves some noting here. He's a great man. He helped us do Prop 19, the very first initiative in California. Prop 19 was in 72, and it didn't win. It got 30%. But in some places, Prop 19 got more than 50%, such as San Francisco, California, where Dennis Peron was. And when Dennis got back from Vietnam, he started selling pot and organizing to legalize pot publicly as best as he could, doing everything he could. Every time the cops knocked him down, he jumped up and started again the next day. By 1978, he had been busted 16 times. A lot of them were bad busts. He was very good in court. That's how he was able to do this. But it gives you some idea of the ferocity of that time. Dennis pointed out in 1975 to the San Francisco legislators that we had won here. We win. Maybe we didn't win with Prop 19 everywhere, but we won in San Francisco, and they ought to do something for the PM. We won in several other places in the state of California, and the laws are wrong, and we ought to do something. And that is where the Moscone Act came from. That is why marijuana went from being a felony in 1975 to being a misdemeanor. It's a really big deal, okay? And that was because a gay man went to the legislators from San Francisco, made the sale, and the Moscone Act got through. A lot of good people pushed it through, and it happened. Pot became a misdemeanor. Harvey Milk. That's the next area we're going to look at here. It's an interesting story. We all know that Harvey was the first gay elected supervisor, one of the first elected officials in the country to be a gay man. And it's a major threshold and a huge, huge leap forward for everybody. We love this. But what we don't know is that it was also a lot of marijuana smokers who put Harvey into office. He was also a cannabis user. Harvey was one of us. He smoked pot. Initially, he was a hippie with long hair. And this all goes back to San Francisco, this intersectionality thing, the gay, queer, pot connection. And it was kind of a brainchild of the supervisors back then. They said, we want to have district elections. So they made all these districts in San Francisco, and they made one that was including just the Haight-Ashbury and the Castro. Hippies and gay guys, gay people. And that is where a lot of things happened. Harvey decided to run for office. He wasn't the only guy that wanted to represent this district. There was a very good gay man by the name of Rick Stokes who was running from the Castro side. There was another guy named Terrence Hallinan running from the hippie side. These guys were both great guys. Great guys. I remember Terrence had a picture in his office of him sitting at a civil rights demonstration with blood coming down his head because he had been hit by the police at the Mel's Diner integration fight. So, and Rick Stokes, he was a civil rights activist going back too. These were good men. But the district wasn't going to elect either of them. The district wanted somebody that represented everybody. And that was a gay, pot-smoking hippie by the name of Harvey Milk, who ran 3 times to get into office, and Dennis Peron, running the Island Restaurant, another gay hippie, pot smoker, really helped him do that, was a big part of the coalition to do that. So I want to argue that this is kind of where our coalition goes back to. And when we all work together for mutual ends, we achieve great things. It goes on. Dennis in 1978 did his first initiative. He collected the signatures and he put a decriminalization, let's just have pot legal in San Francisco. It was advisory because you can't overturn state law, but it passed. It passed in 1978 in San Francisco, and it was Harvey Milk who was going to see it upheld. He was going to follow through with this, make sure it was honored. Harvey was killed a week or 2 after that. Dennis was in jail at that time, and it's unfortunate. But it gives you some idea into the overlap between the different communities and how important it is when we work together and how far back our struggle goes. Just a second here. I want to go back a little bit. I want to skip the history of the world here, and I want to talk about myself for a minute, back in that time period. Back then, I was in New York. I was a New York activist, and I was working in a place called The Saint. The Saint was a notorious gay disco back then. It was a really neat place. It was the old Fillmore East, and now it was a disco, and it was just an amazing place to work and to be at and to party in. But like I said, there was a side to this that was a little difficult. I was in the downstairs. We're in the basement with another guy one day, a gay fella, and we're just chatting. And he looks at me and he says, everyone in my black book is dead. This was 1985. He said, everyone in my black book is dead. I didn't know what to say, obviously, but I can never forget that. I can close my eyes, and I'm in that room right now, and I can hear him say those words. That's the beginning of the AIDS crisis. It didn't have a name yet. Didn't even have a name. Okay? But it had killed a whole lot of people, and it was killing a whole lot more. In 1987, Dennis told me that our friend Jonathan West, he loved Jonathan. They were in love. Jonathan had AIDS. He was the first guy in my life. And I said, oh, my God, I got to get out there. I got to be there. See what I can do to help. So that's what brought me out to California. That's what brought me to San Francisco. I busied myself for a couple of years in San Francisco, continuing the struggle. I did a number of smoke-ins. We organized something in 91 called the Earth Day Hemp Expo. And we're going to show you a clip from that in just a moment. Okay, we're going to cue that up here. In just a moment, we're going to show you that. And we did an initiative in 1991 called Proposition P. It was a great story. Jack Herrera. Jack's a great man, and he used to run around doing these initiatives to legalize pot in California. He educated and helped a lot of people learn from that. But this was 1991, and Dennis decided that he wanted to do something different. And so at this big meeting, we all got together, and he said, we're going to do a medical initiative in San Francisco. And that's where Prop P, the first medical marijuana initiative ever, came from. Now, I told you I organized a thing called the Earth Day Hemp Expo, and this was the dinner party that night. And it was Dennis Peron was our MC. We had 300 people eating a dinner of all marijuana. And so we're all just joking around. And Brownie Mary was still underground back then. She had not been busted yet. So if you knew Brownie Mary back then, you did not know what she was doing. We did not know that she was a hero. We had no idea what she was doing. And I'm going to bring you to these days right now. We're going to show you a 90-second film of Brownie Mary and Dennis Peron. He's going to tell the story of what we knew about her then. And then I'm going to continue it. This is worth seeing. This is real history.
I just saw someone up front here, another famous person. I don't know where she went, but probably hiding. You ever hear of Brownie Mary? Anybody ever hear of Brownie Mary? Yeah. Some of the old timers have heard of Brownie Mary. Let me tell you something about Brownie Mary. She's everybody's grandmother. I see her now. She's hiding. She's blushing. She's very shy. But anyway, she's got a great recipe for marijuana brownies that all people in San Francisco knew about it. Unfortunately, the cops found out about it, and they didn't get the recipe. They tortured her, but they didn't get the recipe. But they did bust her, and it hit the papers because Mary was a little older, and she got busted for pot. But we dug up some dirt on the cop that busted her. It turns out the cop that busted Brownie Mary was himself busted for being drunk and naked and shooting his gun off in the hallway of his girlfriend's apartment. But we found that article, and then we found the article, and we had the article where he busted Brownie Mary, and we put a caricature of him, like drunk and naked, shooting his gun off, and Brownie Mary looking sweet and innocent. And we warning, dangerous. One of these people is dangerous to your health. Which one is it? And then Brownie Mary got busted again by the same cop. We had to pull out more trash. Brownie Mary came out of that one. No prison time, no nothing. They weren't going to put her in jail. She's too feisty. They said, oh, Brownie Mary, she's right over there. She's hiding. She's in pink. She's right with the people there. Yeah, if you can't find Wavy, you can just bring the money up here. It's for Gatewood. Oh, yeah. Has anybody ever heard of Ed Rose?
All right. Yeah, that really brings you back. That gives you a little glimpse into a different time period. That's why I couldn't find it. It was in my pocket there. Okay. This gives you a little glimpse of what we were living in back then. See, Dennis didn't know what she was doing either. What happened was this, okay? Mary came here. She came here. She did the whole Brownie Mary shtick in the 80s, and it was about bonding to the kids. Her daughter had been killed in a car crash in Minnesota before she got here. And that was the story for Brownie Mary. She wanted a new family, and that was her method of getting one, was doing the Brownie Mary shtick for the kids back in the hippies back in the 80s. But when she got busted a couple of times, the second time was serious. And they gave her a choice. They said jail or work service. So she took work service and ended up working in the Shanti Project, which was the very first provider. I told you this AIDS thing, it was a tough thing. The first resources were hammered together here in San Francisco by a bunch of doctors. They wanted to see something happen. They realized something big was going on. And the first response was here, and the first people to handle AIDS patients was the Shanti Project. So Mary ends up working with all the first AIDS patients. People who were going blind from cytomegalo, whatever that is, virus, CMV virus. People that were suffering from Kaposi sarcoma. People that were really, really dying in dramatic, terrible ways. And she realized at that time that the pot would help. But she couldn't get caught because she'd been caught twice. There was no more getting caught. And that's why she was so far underground, that on that night when we introduced her, she was hiding and she wouldn't speak. And no one knew why. That was the end of it. Now, that was 1991. We put Proposition P, the first medical marijuana thing, on the ballot that year, and that passed just a couple months after what you saw there. That passed. Then, the next year, Mary got busted in Sonoma County. Busted. And so, of course, we went to war for her. I told the story in the other movie, so I won't repeat it. But that changed everything. Once they busted her and it was out of the closet, she became the greatest spokeswoman for cannabis that we've ever had. She busted open a whole new demographic, the older people. Challenged that stereotype that it comes from the youngest kid and the worst dressed guy in the schoolyard. Back then, there were only a couple of doctors in the state of California that would work with that recognized this. Those guys were Donald Abrams, MD, Paul Volberding, Marcus Conant, and Wally Krampf. That's that simple. I mean, that's how few guys were willing to put their professional licenses on the line and stand up there and tell the truth in the face of an epidemic that was killing so many really good people. We started the Cannabis Club in 1991. It followed an interesting event. In 1989, we'd been busted. We were underground. We were selling pot to all kinds of people. We were seeing guys with AIDS, and we were seeing healthy people. One day, the cops came, busted us. There was a big trial. They busted 3 houses that night. I went to jail that night. It was quite a tour of the 850 Bryant. There was a quarter-pound of pot that could have put Dennis in jail for a long time. Jonathan West walked into the courtroom on his deathbed and testified that it was his medicine. The judge threw out the charges, and nobody had ever seen that happen before. That was real history. So this influenced our thinking. I was working with Dennis. I'm giving you a lot of history. I'm bringing you into the dark ages here. You're trying to dig out of a hole. Back then, I was 91, 92. I'm working with Dennis. I'm in his house. We're auditing the narcs that year. I'm going department by department, interviewing the guys in probation and the district attorneys, the cops, everyone, the jailers, everyone, finding out how much they're spending on us. Turns out they're spending $5 million a year in San Francisco to harass us every year. Yeah. Remember that when they ask about the taxes. Remember that. They didn't. And when we said that, we said, what about this $5 million? Couldn't you spend it elsewhere? Couldn't you do something else with that? They laugh at us. They laugh at us. Remember that when they talk about the taxes. They laughed at us. So I'm up at Dennis's house, and the doorbell rings. And I'm working on my thing. I'm on a word processor. I'm typing. I'm having a great time, smoking some pot, being an activist. It's a nice day. Doorbell rings. I go down. It's a guy in a hospital robe. Really sick guy in a hospital robe. Wasting away. He's got a cab on the curb. I go down, pay the cab. I ask, what's up? He said, my name's John Oliver. I said, well, what brings you here? You have marijuana. You have pot. What could I say? And I'm telling you this for a reason. You see, back then, we'd lost a lot of people at that point. A lot of my friends had gone to wherever you go when you leave here. And I'd be lying if I said that there wasn't some of me that wanted to go too. That's what happens when a lot of your friends go somewhere. All of a sudden. You know it's crazy, but it hurts like hell. You're alone. It really hurts, folks. It hurts like hell. You just got to get through it. It takes years. We weren't eager to jump back in. The first thing you do is not go down to the next group of people that are dying and say, let's make friends and go through this pain and suffering again. You don't do that. But my doorbell rings. It's John Oliver at the door. He's dying, and he's got a cab, and he needs pot. What am I going to do? Well, he certainly came to the right place. I mean, we weren't distributing it, but we had some, and he figured that out, did what I would do. Turns out he was in the care of the nuns from the Sister of Teresa. You know, Mother Teresa had a convent, and they actually had a program going in San Francisco where they were helping people that had been in the hospital. And this guy's story is he was a gay guy from, like, Tennessee, and he was good with horses. And he came out to Napa. And he was really doing great being a horse guy in Napa. They loved him, and he loved the horses and the whole life. And it wasn't until he got really sick that he ended up in San Francisco in the system. Okay, so I start delivering pot to this guy, and Mary had been busted, and we're working with her and Beth Moore and some of the others, and we're all distributing pot as best we can. And one day I come in there, and he says, John, I'm a little worried about smoking in this. They had him in this great place. This great middle place where everything is perfect. He had a nice little room, a wonderful facility that the Catholics were running in San Francisco. It was good work. And one day he said they put up a sign saying, if you're smoking pot in this facility, we're going to throw you out. I couldn't believe they would do that. One day I went there and he was gone. They did it. Okay. One of the things about being an activist is you join things, you do things. I was on the Drug Abuse Advisory Board that year. Supervisor Terrence Hallinan, he did get on this board eventually, and Supervisor Harry Britt, who replaced Harvey Milk, had a debate over which of them got to put me on that board. It was a great fight. Anyway, I'm on the Drug Abuse Board, and I see this happen, and I'm in the building, and every day I'd go to the board meetings, I'd get stoned on the roof and then walk through the building and meet people and just see the place, because that's what the job is, right? And so I knew the head of mental health from this. And I went to him and I said, Jeff Jew, they threw this guy out on the street, and your department is funding this place. And I'm ready to recycle the entire building. I mean, recycle it. Pile up the bricks here, the glass there, the copper over there. I was really mad. And he said, give me a few minutes. Let me work on this. Bottom line is they apologized. They put it in writing that they looked into their hearts, realized they had done the wrong thing, and they apologized and resolved to never do it again. That's the John Oliver story in a nutshell. He went to a number of other hospitals, by the way. But I want to share that because, change comes slowly and it comes incrementally and it comes one person and one group at a time. And that's been the story of how we got to here. Okay? Like I said, we wanted to do a fight over medical necessity of sales. So we started the Cannabis Club, and we were real public about it. And we figured we'd be in jail that night, you see. But as we explained earlier, it didn't work like that. The cops started sending us patients and helping us. And they refused to bust us, so we ended up growing to this huge number of 8,000 people. We had a 30,000 square foot high-rise on Market Street. And so what we did was we used it as an opportunity to continue the activism. We used it as a publicity example. We got it on television. We got it on the media. We spread the word of medical marijuana, and we worked with the state legislature, and it tried to change the law. Okay? During this time, there was another, I've only got a few minutes, so I want to, okay. We started a statewide discussion and legislative effort that accumulated in 1996 with Proposition 215. And once again, with the intersectionality, because this is come out at the fair day. This is Lesbian and Gay Pride Day at the fair, the 30th of July here today. So it's not just marijuana here today, but it's also a lot of gay and lesbian and bisexual, transgender, queer, plus people here today. And I want to point out that this is the group that did the heavy lifting, that was to put their shoulder to the wheel. It was all those gay newspapers, all those gay doctors, all those gay people, all up and down the state. Gay people are very organized. Very organized. They had to be in California. We have to be. And we are. Potheads are very passionate. We're good with light. We're good with sound. We could work on organization a little more. When we all team up, we got something good. That's what happened with Prop 215. It was a huge effort. A lot of people worked really hard on that. We started the first cannabis club, the first cannabis farm up in Lake County, later, or the second, I'll say. I want to talk about the future a little bit before we go on. The future is going to be different. I told you, we're changing. It's not over yet. This time right now is like the car industry before Henry Ford. Those were beautiful cars they used to make. And there were 3,000 car companies in this country. Okay, but you couldn't afford one. It wasn't going to make a system where you could have driven here from San Francisco. No way. What we're looking at in the future is a globalized trade in cannabis and hemp. And this is really happening, people. America has to get with the program here. UN Resolution 232, the Single Convention Treaty. This was put in under Nixon. And now it's being unwound right now in the UN. And not just like right now, they just started, but they started 5 years ago. Okay, and they've been working hard at the UN to change the international laws and open up the trade in cannabis again internationally. Because this is a global thing. This is not an American thing. This is a global thing. We got China. We got Russia. We got countries all over the world that need to go with the program 100%. There's some good news out of Mexico, Thailand, several other countries. But like I said, there's also some very dark news. La lucha continua. The struggle continues. In Russia, China, many other places, we are not free. And you... All right, I'm going to overshout this woman. We are not free until Brittany Griner is free, okay? They got her testifying in a cell she can't even stand up in. Okay, I want to remember that over and over again. And once again, gay, lesbian people are on the forefront of this thing. Okay, let me tell you, when your fellow citizens spend $5 million a year to put you in a cage, you are an interest group. You may not think it, but you are something. You got to do something about it. You know, last comment. There's a lot of talk about money in this thing, and there is a lot of money in this thing. I'll give you that. But I want to tell you, I've been on a tobacco farm as a kid, and I learned a very important lesson about farming. It ain't about money. In fact, to paraphrase Mencius, the Chinese guy, you'd sooner find money farming than you will catching a fish by climbing a tree. Okay? The arguments are basically that prohibition is really expensive. When they're spending $5 million a year in one county, imagine what that is on a bigger level. It's unimaginable. And what happens when we do that? We fill prisons with poor people and people of color. That's what we do. We learn this. If you're going to do a drug war and you're going to lock people up for cannabis infractions, not paying their tax, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the day, you're going to see what I saw when I was checked into county jail. You're going to walk down a hallway and you're going to see giant cells on your right and on your left, all the way down, and every one of them is going to be filled with black men. I can't take that out of my mind. You can't close your eyes and not see that. You don't want to go there. You don't want to do that. That is what? That is the benefit of stopping the drug war. It isn't the taxes. It isn't the money you're going to make selling pot. It's that you're not going to put people in jail anymore. That's a good thing. Likewise, cannabis is a really great product. Lots of people really love it. For God's sakes, those are the reasons that we do what we do. Okay? And we are struggling through a background of a lot of prejudice and a lot of discrimination. I'll just be 1 minute. Okay? There are a lot of vestiges of bad laws and very bad economics. Okay? Because we've been in the dark for a long time. We didn't have a choice. It was ugly. Okay? I have paid so much money for pot. I paid $4,800 for a pound of pot. And I've seen droughts where it goes up to $6,400. If you can even see the pot and steal a bud, you're doing great. I am not kidding you. Okay? It's not about the money. Okay? We are inheriting really bad economics here. We are inheriting a lot of discrimination, and it persists to this day with the censorship. All this social media double talk where we can't be on Facebook, we can't be on Twitter, we can't talk about pot. But Congress can talk about pot. The Senate can talk about pot. They can write laws taxing us. But we can't have a forum on social media to talk about our own fate. The laws that are being passed to govern us, we can't even talk about them. That's censorship. Okay? Where's the pot caucus? There's a California, we have the California Gay Caucus. Where's the pot caucus? Where are the marijuana smokers represented on commissions and boards in our society? Yet we are a group. We have learned a lot from our discrimination and from our experience. We have been socially derided. So I just want to close on this. I want to remind you on this day today that queer people and cannabis users and people of color, we have to, and more, we have to build a coalition, and we have to fight for a better country and a better world, and we got to do it fast. We got to do it fast. We have the ability to do it fast. Let's make it happen, okay? Look at what we've done out there through activism. You can have your service dog here. We are legal here with cannabis, gay marriage. We are on track. We got more to do. We got a planet to save. We have a planet to save. And on that happy note, I want to thank Brian Applegarth and the guys, all the men and women at Cultivar, and I want to thank them for breaking us into this fair and for putting a new face on cannabis, for getting us out of those dark hip-hop days and all that weird, trendy garbage and putting us in a place where we recognize that the demographics of cannabis are real, that old people smoke cannabis, young people, people who work, all kinds of working people. We are not just a bunch of hip-hop people. We are a family value drug. And we deserve to be at this fair, and we should be here with all the families. And this is where we should be. And I want to thank Brian one last time. And I just want to note one last thing, and that's that Brittany Grinner one last time. And a shout-out to Ronda Rousey and David Nick, a couple of fellow athletes from California that fought for our right to smoke cannabis. A lot of people are contributing to this struggle. Athletes, doctors, activists, everyone. Okay, that's it. I'm going to shut up. I want to thank everybody.
John Entwistle. Thanks, John. Thanks for being here and sharing your knowledge.